Through Project Child Fund, your special child will do more than learn in the classroom. Contact your local Dodd school about Project Child Fund. AFN TV, Europe.
Yes, good morning. Jan Wood here. Let me in, please.
Okay.
The setting, Frankfurt. Headquarters, AFN. An organization in the early morning hours of another broadcast day.
Yeah, he's coming in.
The sights, sounds, and actions of AFN setting the mood for our day. It's our live communications link with the U.S.
Okay.
Filipino president, Corazon Aquino, please. With Moscow on a comprehensive nuclear test bed treaty, correspondent Bonnier Bay has details.
The House has no power over treatment stations.
Hello, Americans. I'm Army Sergeant Tony Silva, Tony on the tower. Paul Harvey's going to tell you the rest of the story in just a few minutes.
Clear 14 degrees in Frankfurt right now. And you got to take it sort of day by...
Morning to all our listeners in the Benelux this morning. Army Sergeant Kim Danik here on the home of America's hot hits.
AFN Würzburg People-Powered Radio Specialist John Hansen with you. Coming up here in a few minutes, Army. Coming up next on the Voice of Southern Bavaria, AFN Munich, we'll take a look at the local ski conditions here in...
AFN Kaiserslautern salutes the men and women of the 601st...
AFN Stuttgart. Morning, Southwest Germany. Coming up in just a few minutes, CPO today will be...
Thursday morning here at the power station, AFN Bremerhaven.
Berlin is summed up in one word, and that is wet. So get out your ponchos, umbrellas,
make sure you take your raincoat
anything that'll help you dodge the raindrops today.
In the U.S., the average household can tune in to 3 major television networks, countless cable television stations, and about 20 AM and FM radio stations. For the American military in Europe, there's just one radio and television network, AFN.
Sam Harris, I'll do it all again on a big number 1.
It's 6 o'clock in Central Europe. From AP, UPI, and the major American networks, the news is next on AFN.
Top Pentagon health official continues visits to American communities in Europe.
Radio and television, very important in our daily lives. We really depend on them. In this special report, we'll explore the role of a network serving the Armed Forces radio and television mission. Radio. Adult listening is now more than 2 hours a day. Not bad for a tune-in, tune-out medium. We wake up to radio, listen at breakfast, and as we hurry to work or school. Most cars have radio, and it's during rush hour traffic that broadcasters reach the most people. Radio is portable. It's in the office, at a picnic, at a ball game, anywhere we are. It tells us the best time to exchange our money and can inform us about consumer and social issues and host nation customs and opportunities. After more than 30 years, we have come to depend on television for daily subsistence. Studies show that the average American family watches TV 7.5 hours a day. It's the prime leisure time activity for many of us. We change our habits to catch our favorite programs, or we record them on video cassette and view them later. Compared to the U.S., where 25% of Americans have VCRs, nearly 60% of AFN's audience has one. That makes the audience the programmer. We decide what to watch and when. Both radio and television can ease the feeling of isolation we sometimes feel when stationed overseas. With satellite news, sports, information, and entertainment, we can return home at the turn of a dial. And when we really do go home at the end of our tour, we won't feel out of touch. The way people look and listen to AFN is with expectations shaped through years of experience with American media, literally thousands of radio and television stations.
Wondering why you play such a variety of music and instead of mainly playing one type.
I don't understand why they don't have a lot of shows from the States.
Why the people, there are other Americans in my building on the economy, and they can get AFN in, and my husband and I can't get it in at all.
I don't understand why they why AFN continually shows older movies.
I don't understand why they have so much news.
And it's AFN's challenge to serve those varied interests as diverse as its audience. We'll attempt to show you how on this special report.
This is a special report, an inside look at the American Forces Network Europe. Your host, Army Sergeant Jay Field.
This probably looks familiar. Most of us see it every night on the AFN Evening News. But AFN wasn't always visual. Its roots are in radio.
Soldiers, sailors, and
A real live nephew of our Uncle Sam, AFN was born on the 4th of July, 1943. Basement studios of the BBC in London became AFN's first home as it served U.S. GIs in England. When the troops stormed the beaches at Normandy on D-Day, AFN carried the news with them. And as they marched across France, the Low Countries, and into Germany, AFN followed, keeping U.S. soldiers in tune.
To AFN Frankfurt.
Gosh, that Hoagie Carmichael's certainly a talented fellow, isn't he, Jack?
Well, yes, of course, all of us good songwriters have to be.
Here, the AFN tradition was seeded and cultivated into a longtime companion of the American service member in Europe. AFN is still here today to serve as your voice and view of home. Our parent organization in Los Angeles, the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, AFRTS, is chartered by the Department of Defense to provide information and entertainment to more than 1 million U.S. Forces personnel, DoD civilians, and their family members overseas. With over 300 stations around the world, AFRTS is in 44 countries, 15 territories, and on hundreds of ships at sea. AFN Europe is the largest AFRTS outlet, serving an audience of a little more than 500,000 people. Headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany, AFN has 10 radio affiliates serving Americans throughout Germany, West Berlin, Belgium, and the Netherlands. AFN Berlin also operates its own TV station.
Minutes ahead of 8 o'clock on Bavaria Land's most listened to radio station. That's us, AFN Nuremberg. That's the Doobie Brothers there. Take Me in Your Arms. And now Tarzan Boy from Baltimore on the tower.
The morning jock's job is to get people charged up in the morning, charge up their batteries. You'll want to do more weather information. You'll also want to have time very frequently so that people who are listening to the radio as they're shaving or whatever the case may be are aware of the time. They're also aware of the weather conditions and traffic conditions that are going to take them to work.
AFN, 9 minutes past 8 o'clock on the Tower of Power, and we're putting some sound downrange, and I got my finger on the trigger. Who am I? I'm Army Sergeant Tony Silva.
Tony on the tower, still taking a look at that nasty freeze out there. 12 degrees in the Metroplex under blue skies. Actually, it's looking kind of nice.
I think also a military jock, when he gives his name and rank, is more relatable to a military audience. They know that this guy isn't somebody sitting up in an ivory tower having a good old time. They know that we go to formations. They know that we have, range fire, NBC training, common task training, and they know that we have to do an SQT just like any other soldier.
Military broadcasters get their professional training in broadcast journalism at the Defense Information School, Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. But the schooling doesn't stop there.
When we get a young broadcaster with no prior commercial experience, we try and work on the basics of journalism, on presentation, before we really start trying to say, go out and be a personality. Young broadcasters sometimes have a tendency to develop a so-called star complex. We make it very clear to every broadcaster that the stars, if there are any, are out there in a hatch driving an APC or or an Abrams or some type of vehicle. Those are the real stars. Those are the only reason that we're here and have this job.
Ball games, boring, boring, boring. Enough to put you to sleep, right? Tuesday Morning Madness continues on Bavaria Land AM with Mr.
You're obviously making a reference to the game that extended into the morning show, but remember, you're picking up listeners for the first time here. They may not even know what you're talking about. You might want to have included one little remark. If you're going to try personality humor, make sure you try it and don't lose anybody in the process. Every 15 minutes, you pick up another 5, 10, 15% of your audience, and not everybody got that. In our training, we emphasize where they're not hitting the nail on the head, and then we go and give them an example of how to hit the nail on the head, then we help them to hit the nail on the head, then we go back and tell them you hit the nail on the head.
Show them the dog in all his glory. About all they'll see is a black cup of coffee and some red saggy eyes. Or should I say Betty Davis eyes.
Good. Nice lead in to the tie into the song, and a nice mellow was good voice to a music match over. A DJ, the typical radio personality, knows so many things about so many things. He's really never mastered the shoe salesman business. He really never mastered the biology business, but he knows a lot about everything, and he can relate that to people. His big claim to fame is he can communicate, and I'd say that's where AFN DJs come in. It's one thing to read command information, like things of military information off of a card. It's quite another thing to take that same information, rework it, and communicate the idea. We believe that the listener will respond more effectively to the second approach, that if an idea is communicated to him, he will remember it and react to it rather than if it was just read to him, or even in the worst case, read at him.
In the U.S., listeners can spin the dial and find a station that plays their kind of music around the clock. AFN Radio, as a single-channel station, has to present a wide variety of musical styles, something for everyone sometime during the day. AFN DJs provide variety by adhering to a format program wheel. The format is contemporary hit radio.
Contemporary hit radio is a hybrid of what we used to call top 40 back in the 60s, and then in the 70s we hit kind of a dearth, and now recently personality radio has had a rebirth, and formats have homogenized. That means what used to be called urban or black music is being played on so-called top 40 stations, and top 40 music is being played on so-called urban or black stations, and this homogenization is breaking down color barriers, music barriers, and I think it's good. The new thing is to have a personality on the radio that's light, breezy, entertaining, guy that's fun to listen to, or guy or gal, lots of information, and then so-called hot hit music, or the hits. And this is something they call, well, it's contemporary, they play hits, and it's radio. And out of that they put contemporary hit radio, or CHR.
Where do our musical selections come from? Well, the headquarters AFN Music Library contains some 350,000 of these platters of plastic wax. You could listen day and night for 7 years and never hear the same selection twice. Or it could take you 30 years to listen to all of them. Of course, some selections would be repeated. For example, this one, Body and Soul. It has over 100 different artists. Frank Sinatra, Coleman Hawkins Orchestra, Billie Holiday, Manhattan Transfer. Many of the transcriptions are the popular music you hear every day on AFN. The records contain single and album cuts in pop, western, Latin, and religious music. Still others are pre-produced programs from AFRTS, ranging in type from classical shows to radio dramas to the popular disc jockey shows.
With the AFRTS programs, we get to provide for our listener another sound of home. We give them a disc jockey from Los Angeles. We give them a disc jockey from Reno, Nevada. We give them a disc jockey from the East Coast versus the talent that we have locally here. A lot of them are specialty programs, the country programs that we air, the Casey Kasem, the American Top 40 program, the Charlie Tuna, the Wolfman Jack. There are personalities that are unique and one of a kind.
These specialty programs are aired throughout the 24-hour broadcast day, supplementing AFN's own live time. AFN also provides for some alternate programming.
In certain locations throughout Germany and in Holland and in Belgium, a listener has the option to switch to one of the FM services and pick up a completely different program that originates from AFN. For example, when the country show Gene Price is on, there is adult contemporary music on, which is the softer rock sounds of today.
Whether you listen to AFN AM or FM, you can hear news on the hour every hour of every day. And AFN television averages 7 news and information programs per broadcast day. Through these programs on both radio and television, AFN dedicates itself to the concept of a free flow of information.
The AFN Evening News.
We receive many of our programs live. If something would occur in the context of a news story that would happen to be not so flattering to the military or to the president, AFN would air that newscast as we receive it. We would not alter it in any way, nor would we really want to. Our particular aim is to provide the same news coverage to our audience that would be available to them back in the United States.
Where do we get our news information? Well, AFN probably has more sources than any other broadcast organization. The backbone of our news coverage is 24-hour teletype service from the major news wires, the Associated Press, United Press International, Euronews, and a special wire from AFRTS. And there is a 24-hour feed via satellite of radio and television news. With it, AFN has access to major network newscasts from ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, PBS, Mutual, and AP Radio. To round out the coverage, AFN relies on its 10 affiliate news bureaus and many public affairs offices.
They are the heartbeat of that particular community, and they give us stories from their areas with a local interest aspect to it that would never be picked up by one of the major networks or by one of the wire services.
Balancing its coverage of controversial subjects, AFN provides a forum for newsmakers and reporters to battle the issues and express views from both sides of the fence.
They are the views, the commentary of one particular viewpoint. And so that's the reason we tie our commentaries into a different package or a different program block, whereas our news reports from different locations around the world that we use during our regular newscasts, those are strictly from a standpoint of news coverage without being tinged or influenced by personal viewpoints.
Giving their country
Are you
around
suggesting that one of the reasons for these attacks is to encourage insurgency among the Libyan people?
I'm not suggesting that's what's to encourage, but I'd love to have that be the result.
I'm Bruce Foreman, CBS News.
He needs this afternoon. He may well be able to get that shot in the can still today if we need it.
This is the TV News morning meeting, more like a farmer's market. The merchants gather to buy, barter, and sell ideas. Here, the TV News team discusses the strategy for the day's news coverage.
We're going to probably use that if we get under the credits, supposing video.
News director Wally Cornelison, the boss, concerned with both radio and television news.
We're going to have to relook some of the road shots with our field reporters to keep them close to home, I think.
Assignments editor Gary Bautel, he's the focal point who lines up the stories and is responsible for getting them covered.
I think I'll have a team available this afternoon, and it should only take a couple of hours to take care of it. Do you have a news, Bautel?
Producer Paul Macco keeps the cast on time and determines the order of the elements.
What the long-term outlook is, if we can get a currency dealer here in Frankfurt to comment on that.
Kathy Beavers, news anchor, writing the material that ties the stories together and keeps the newscast flowing.
That we get some kind of comment from a Western official, either in Bonn or here in Frankfurt, that will kind of enhance what's coming across the wires today. Perhaps we can get a soundbite.
The TV news crew, with over 500 assignments, they have traveled more than 60,000 miles a year to as far north as Norway and as far south as Mali, Africa. Now, to clearly communicate a story to you, they must first clearly communicate with each other.
What I'd like to do is get a couple of on the street, on-demand kind of street interviews with the soldiers, get their viewpoint, along with the coordinator of this event.
Sounds pretty good. What I could probably do is get you a lot of good, wide, steady shots, you know, people on their equipment, and get in close, you know, the Germans and the American mingling, you know.
Their job's a little bit different than either radio or newspapers. It takes a team of two, one responsible for the words, the other the pictures. Neither can stand alone. And if they don't work together, they won't get a good story.
He talked about that in that interview. He talked about some problems that they were having as far as the compatibility between two vehicles. I think we should go back and maybe get some more shots of that vehicle and show the differences between them. What do you think?
What I'll do is I'll just shoot it from different angles. A couple wide shots and a couple close-ups.
All right, let's head down to the vehicles and see what's cooking down there.
I take this upstairs, because take a look at that information.
While the day is well underway here, final sports scores from the States are just coming in.
TV sports here has a bigger block because different than the United States. In the United States, say if you're in Iowa, you'd be covering your local region and the regional sports. Here, we don't have a region. We've got Europe, all our European sports, but then when we cover the United States, we have to cover all the sports from all the different regions, all the pro sports, all the college sports, and everybody's college and everybody's pro team. So it takes longer to do that.
One of the most important programming decisions made each week is weekend sports coverage. AFN considers the interests and tastes of its audience before developing a schedule.
The decision is not reached by any single person, although the commander of AFN is a person who puts all of that together and makes a final decision. The sports people are involved, the budget people are involved, the technical people are involved, the programming people are involved, and then all the programming people who do the daily logs are involved to make this work.
The events are chosen by the major American networks who supply them to AFRTS. AFN tries to balance the coverage on radio and television when on occasion AFN has a choice of games. If one's available on radio, the other can be carried on TV. Not only is the Chief of Television Operations concerned with sports programming, but he is also responsible for scheduling all TV programs.
My problem is I have NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, independent networks, and we only have one channel on which to put that programming. This causes a nightmare for the viewer who likes to change the channel selector, but it's a little tougher for us because we have to find places to put it.
There's always something new on AFN television, because in the U.S., series last only 26 weeks before they go into the rerun season, but not on AFN. As one ends, another begins on AFN. And AFN carries more than 90% of the top 75 shows in the United States.
Now that number needs to be emphasized just a little bit more. 75 of the top series in the United States does not take into account much of the other programming we have. For example, you add the soaps that we carry, add the sports, add the game shows, and you'll find that AFN has a very large share of the pie of America's popular programming.
AFRTS obtains programs from the industry for a nominal service fee, millions of dollars worth of series and films that otherwise would be unaffordable. Still, AFRTS can't get just any program. Shows are sold to the commercial stateside and foreign networks and stations for several runs years apart and aren't immediately available to the military market. However, AFN is seeing a trend where AFRTS is receiving programs like The Cosby Show and Ripley's Believe It or Not in the same season they air in the States. Add those to shows like Solid Gold, Variety Specials, 60 Minutes, Miss America, and the Academy Awards. These are time-perishable programs brought to AFN live via satellite. It's a bird spinning through space, receiving signals from AFRTS in Los Angeles, and with barely enough power to stun a flea, sends the sights and sounds to Earth-receiving stations in Germany. It's SatNet, and it's news, sports, and special entertainment live.
Well, it allows our audience here in Europe to sit right inside the United States when things are happening. Today in America is today right here in Europe. It keeps us in touch with home.
Between 4 and 10:30 p.m., AFN begins its programs on the hour and half hour. A tough task when the programs come to us decommercialized. That is, without the 7 to 10 minutes of stateside commercials. AFN fills to the hour and half hour with short programs.
This gives the viewer the opportunity to understand that he can depend on television. So when he's trying to catch his program, it increases his awareness of when it's coming and his chances of catching it. Also, if he'd like to videotape it, he knows when it's going to be there. And we try very hard to be plus or minus 15 seconds of the time that we broadcast in the Stars and Stripes. And I might point out, the Stars and Stripes is the absolute latest up-to-date information we have
what's going to be on AFN television today.
Schedules are also broadcast frequently on radio and television. The TV promotions department produces more than 50 promos a day, telling you when a show is coming to AFN, when one's leaving, and what time it airs. Along with promoting AFN's shows comes the job of promoting AFN itself through high-tech computer graphics. The first image logos were primitive, produced with positive and negative films. Next came computer graphics from local production facilities. And now, AFN has the tool to create its own special effects graphics.
We have the Dubner, which is a special effects graphics generator that does the same thing that we have done previously in other studios. We can make images fly by, we can transform one image into another, and give that three-dimensional look to graphics.
Tonight on Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
What makes AFN different from stateside commercial stations? No commercials? Well, not exactly. AFN's combined daily total of radio and television command information is in excess of 1,000 messages. Some are provided by the Defense Department. Others are produced by AFN's radio and television command information staffs. AFN's own ad agency.
But you know what's different? Is that an ad agency, most of the time at least, is product advertising. They're selling this product, this soap, or this aspirin. What we're doing many times is selling an idea, selling something like self-esteem. A little bit abstract when you start to think about how you would communicate that through television. Something like self-esteem, how a soldier, sailor, or airman feels about themselves, how you can enhance that positive feeling that we want all military people to have about themselves. I don't think it's any secret that people who have watched American Forces television for some time, I think they can remember the days when many of the messages that came over the air had a kind of punitive or preachy air about them. That's not effective communications. We've got a kind of general philosophy now that if you can't say something constructively and communicate it effectively, then don't say it.
They communicate through 30 and 60-second commercials, mini spots, and daily video messages on information supplied by commanders.
A client will come to us and they'll say, we have a need to communicate a message to an audience. And you might have an E4 or an E5 who takes that commander's idea and translates it into the visual media. Now that's an awesome responsibility.
AFN uses a scientific approach towards scheduling command information messages in entertainment programs. It's called day parting.
We deliver audiences to messages. We know that certain audiences are the dominant viewers of certain types of programs and at certain times of the day. In television you hear that called day parts. There are certain parts of the day where certain viewers are more likely to watch than other viewers. What we like to do is to take those messages that are destined for specific audience groups and put them in those day parts where we know we're going to be more effective than if we just willy-nilly throw them into the broadcast schedule. So in that respect, we deliver audiences to messages.
But once the entertainment is over, how do you hold an audience in order to get your message across?
In America, people are born these days with a switch in their head, which when a commercial comes on the radio, the switch breaks and they just don't hear the spot coming on the radio at all. The result of this kind of conditioning, years and years of torture by advertisers who use weasel-worded phraseology, hard sell, and all of these used car dealer-type spots. People just don't like them. I have developed a philosophy that if you think first of your listener, you avoid the problems that I was just referring to. We do that here at AFN. We feel that if we do radio in the way that it is most effective, appealing to the imagination, it would be very much like salesman Stan Freberg once said when they asked him, well, doesn't radio stretch the imagination such as radio does? Doesn't TV do that? And he says, yes, TV stretches the imagination too, up to 27 inches.
The Radio Command Information Staff uses techniques that big ad agencies in the States are using. Multiple voices and sound effects.
Hats off to the most energy-efficient military community in USER.
Mannheim.
Mannheim wins first prize of $500,000.
Karlsruhe.
Is awarded $300,000.
Zweibrücken.
Zweibrücken wins $250,000.
Saluting the winners of the USER AFN Television Europe.
The efforts of many come down to just one person in television, the TV Master Control Operator. This person is charged with airing all television programming on time. That's a tough job when you consider the more than 50 tasks to be accomplished in a 2-minute span between shows.
It gets pretty wild. I mean, you only can take just a split second to make sure your video and audio levels are correct before you got to queue up your next one. If something goes wrong or we have a problem or something happens back in the States, it's up to me immediately to make a decision and make the right decision. And that job, to me, is the best job there is here at AFN.
Studio Operations not only runs the TV programs we see, but they also support other departments at AFN in producing programs. Programs like Spotlight, Passport, Prime Time, and Gasthaus. The producers of these special programs are in the Special Events Department.
But they all have sort of the same thread running through them, and that's a look at ourselves and a look at our neighbors and what we do in our off-duty hours and our off-duty days and what we can do.
A daily interview program with experts on the issues that impact on us, and a look at changes in military regs and upcoming events. Spotlight, a weekly personality feature profiling the unique side of American service members in Europe, people you'd probably like to meet.
It is Challenge that took that pilot to expressing his love of flight through art.
Passport, a monthly travel show featuring not only where to go, but how to get there.
Civilians need a passport here. Air Force members need a passport or USAFE Form 80 stating Holland with leave orders. Army members need a passport or a DA Form 31 stating Holland with leave orders.
This is all important information for those of us who are in a foreign country for the first time and are faced with a foreign language.
Fleischspieß and Nierenspieß, 2 different types of barbecued meats.
Prime Time. It's a monthly variety entertainment magazine which takes a look at our lifestyle, new technology, and entertainment.
Everybody goes, oh, there it is. 1, 2, 3. Very good. We're dancing now.
Then there's Special Report, like this one on AFN. Special Report takes an in-depth look at service organizations like the Exchange, Stars and Stripes, and the Community Bank.
The U.S. government does insure the account holder's money. In fact, the United States government has a very big hand in policies of the Community Bank.
Good evening. We're live from our AFN studios in Frankfurt tonight with a look at a government-wide budget-cutting move that's affecting all the military services worldwide.
Because they were so important to families Army-wide that they would go ahead and implement those programs.
Dodge program and the faculty is accustomed to assimilating students throughout the school year. So
our programs do contribute to the quality of life. We give them information so they can make choices about their off-duty time and about how they're going to have their lifestyle over here.
According to recent audience surveys, the average family watches more than 7 hours of TV a day, while a single adult watches for more than 4 hours daily. But only 70% of our total potential audience is reached by AFN television. Why can't everyone receive AFN?
Or have to limit by licensing agreement our transmitting power to a level that will cover a concentration of Americans, although there is some spillover and people outside of this area can also receive it, depending on the means or the extent they want to go to try to get it. Other people that live too far out or too far off of a transmitter beam will not be able to receive it due to the fact that it's just a very weak signal. We are limited in power because we have to fit in within the host country highly developed distribution system and not spill over and cause interference to their services.
AFN television is a studio station, meaning AFN feeds its video and audio from color studios into a microwave system of the 5th Signal Command, who then distributes it to the various areas and communities throughout Europe. 98% of AFN's total potential audience receives AFN radio. Although most listen to radio about 2 hours a day,
We depend on radio for news and information to help plan our day. And we depend on AFN being there on the air.
Approximately 50 transmitter sites, and each site has 100% redundancy, that is a primary and a secondary transmitter. In the event the primary transmitter becomes defective, a secondary transmitter can either by manual or automatic means be brought up on air to continue coverage.
We only see or hear the on-air personalities. These are the unsung heroes, the people behind the scenes. But the broadcasters know they are dependent upon their skilled colleagues who keep the equipment operating. They're like firemen, always ready to react in an emergency. Without them, there would be no broadcast. AFN has sections common to all military organizations, unique only in that they support our broadcast mission. For example, supply and logistics. The AFN General Store stocks over 1,000 items, ranging from paper clips to TV tubes to radio transmitters. The military and civilian personnel and administration sections contribute to a smooth-running network by shouldering the administrative chores. They support over 300 people located in 3 countries. And because AFN is comprised primarily of military personnel, the training section coordinates required training. Training in jobs as soldiers and broadcasters.
Too many people think of AFN as just a bunch of broadcasters. They don't understand that we are a military organization. It's comprised of soldiers and it's comprised of airmen. We have inspections, we have formations, we do PT, just like any other organization. The only difference is that our military occupational specialty, the MOS, is broadcasting. That's what our people do. But first and foremost, they're soldiers and they're airmen.
Affiliates extend AFN service on a regional basis in radio, and in the case of those with studios, in TV. They serve local commanders and the people in their communities. They also are regional radio and television news bureaus for the network, reporting stories of interest to the entire audience in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. What has taken the news crew hours to cover must now be distilled to less than 2 minutes to meet the time constraints of the newscast. In the edit cell, the reporter is cutting and pasting his story together electronically, matching his voice with the pictures. The focus of the AFN Evening News is on the local story.
We no longer cover national or international news on our AFN television evening newscast unless the story is making news here in Europe. Our particular focus is to concentrate on the stories and the issues which are relevant to the American community living here in Europe.
We try to take the same approach that a local television station would back in the States, whether that station be in New York, Chicago, San Diego, or Dallas, trying to serve uniquely the people in that community. And the only real difference is that most television stations back in the States serve a city. Even if it is a large city like New York or Chicago, we're serving a geographic area the size of a state, like the state of Oregon. So we really have a very wide, spread out area to cover.
It's now 5:30. The producer meets with the director of the newscast. He's in charge of putting on the air what we see and hear. Together, they go over the script. It will serve as the crew's roadmap of where the newscast is going.
Soccer, 74-44. All right.
Bring up the lights.
Engineer, can you just slide on film 8? Okay, tape operator, are you ready to go? Yes. Good, glad that you are then. Okay, stand.
Cameras are ready to come through position. All right, that's his basketball. We're 5 games on that.
I knew you were going to say snow.
Bring down the audio. Okay.
Oh, great. On the pro courts last night, the Hawks had a rough time. Good evening. Good night. Like day-to-day throughout.
Take it.
You're okay.
In black.
Good night.
On the camera number 2. 30 seconds. Stand by. Ready to dissolve the camera 2 and take 3. Dissolve the 2. Take 3.
Good evening.
Okay,
I'm Kathy Beavers. Masses of data from
I'm going to run and start.
AFN means for me good news.
Brings us closer to home.
I kind of like the station because it has to do with the military.
It brings us closer to stateside too. You know, makes us feel like we're at home.
Seeing things that remind your home, you know, and that make you feel a little better.
Like being at home, I guess. It's the second best thing to being home.
Take care of business to play the hits for the coming hours. Stick around.
Hello, Americans. This is Paul Harvey. Stand by for news. I do not know why the band was traveling so fast.
Oh, I'm ready. How about you? Let's bring on Fats Domino.
It's 11 o'clock in Central Europe. From AP, UPI, and the major American networks, the news is next on AFN.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Mary Turner, and we're going to get things going today with the latest from Van Halen.
The stock market drifted to a lower finish Thursday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped about 2 points, while losing issues outnumbered at
Hey, how you doing out there? You got the old Wolfman here, baby. Well, come on, let's do it right here in the AFRTS, mama. Yeah, Janet Jackson.
This is the American Forces Network, Europe.